Hey there, thank you for joining me for this 2-minute video all about the awesome dunes. In this clip, we're going to be learning what dunes are, how they're formed, and how they change over time. So first up, what is a dune? Well, a dune is a hill or a mound that's formed by sand, and we find them at beaches and we find them in deserts. Here in the UK, we find them all around the coastline, at the beaches, the beautiful big beaches. Sand dune systems are a super important habitat to loads and loads of plants, animals and insects. And in fact, without the sand dunes, a lot of those creatures would actually become extinct. They also act as a really important natural barrier for our towns and cities. But I'm getting carried away, so first let's think about how they form. In order to form, they need 5 things to be perfect. So they need a long, flat beach, lots and lots of sand. They need a really strong onshore wind. They need to have big tides so that there's lots of time for the sand to dry out between the high tide and the low tide. And they need an obstacle like this one to stop the wind blowing the sand and to start forming the dunes. Once all of those conditions are met, the dunes can start to be made. Let's go see how that happens. So when we've got these strong winds, they blow the dry sand up the beach. The energy of that sand moving gets stopped by the obstacle, where the sand then falls. Over time, the more wind brings more sand up, and it might start to fall over the back of the obstacle, and that's where your little hill starts to form. But at this point, it's not a dune because it's so unstable. Actually, the whole thing could be washed away next time there's a big wave or lots of wind. What we need are some plants to hold that dune together. We need to get some seeds. So if the right kind of seeds make their way to these dunes, their roots will grow through the sand and create all of these beautiful grasses. They help to stabilise the dune and form what we know as an embryo dune. And that's where the life cycle of the dune systems begin. Those embryo dunes then are an obstacle themselves for new sand washing up the beaches, and other dunes can form around them. Let's go have a little walk around this dunes and see if we can find a new embryo dune forming. So I'm here on the Strand line. Now this is where the high tide came up to last night. You can clearly see that there's some wet sand and some dry sand. And all of that dry sand has got the potential to make new sand dunes. And here is a potential new embryo dune. You can see it's formed a little hill, and it's this driftwood that has caused it to be here. Hopefully we'll get some seeds in this patch of sand soon, and that will give it some strength. Otherwise, the next time we've got a very high tide or lots of wind, this is just going to get washed away. Let's keep walking. So this dune has been here for quite a while. You can see all of the beautiful grasses behind me, and if you look just here, you can see all of the roots holding up the dune and giving it its strength. But there's also loads of sand here still as well, and that tells us that dune hasn't finished doing its job. It is still being an obstacle for all of this sand blowing across. It hasn't finished its work yet. Now I'm here in this really sheltered spot in between all of the dunes, and this is called the slack. Different animals and plants live here in this little sheltered area, but more about that another time. So this is what we call a mature dune, and you can see the difference straight away. There's not a lot of sand here, and there's an awful lot of plant life. Now, when the grasses here were to die and decompose, they changed the characteristics of the sand below it. Not just the colour, which you can see is grey, but it also means they change what can live here. There's a wider diversity of plants, and with that, a wider diversity of animals as well. Now, those changes are called ecological succession, and every time some more sand blows up the beaches, the dunes get bigger, and that succession can continue. So how do we make sure that these dune systems are thriving and healthy? Now you know how important the plants and the grasses are for the stabilisation of the dunes. Next time you visit them, make sure that you're walking around the plants and the grass in the sandy patches where there's not so much life. Dunes need space. They are growing every single time there is even a puff of wind. So let's give them room to expand. And make sure you pick up any litter that you see. Doing a 2-minute beach clean next time you're at the dunes helps remove the litter, which is such a threat to the animals and the plants that live in this really important habitat. Thanks for listening, everybody. I will see you next time to learn more about our awesome dunes.